Okay, I was watching a clip that someone had presented. It was a throwback to, I think, the 1990s, early 2000s, when there was a TV show, I think it was called America's Top Model, and it featured Tyra Banks, and they were criticizing this woman who looked pretty normal looking to me, quite honestly, but they said she was just too heavy to be a top model, a skeleton runway model, which clearly, when we look at models from the 1970s onward, were often rail thin, and that was the look that was in vogue. Some very unhealthy practices went into that. A lot of them were heavy smokers. They were basically had eating disorders, many of them. And it was not a healthy way to be. And so they have, they were looking at how far we've come from that. And I'll point to where, I think there's a middle ground, and then there's what we're seeing now with these ginormous women that are morbidly obese, claiming model status, which I think is also a problem. But just away from that topic, the world has lost. Not to laugh, it's sad that the guy's died, but there's a guy named Valdor Salgado who just died at 55, my age. He is Brazilian, and this is a sort of an image of him. And so he was obsessed with big muscles, and he didn't spend time in the gym building them. He didn't take a bunch of steroids to get them. He injected himself with a substance called Synthol, which is an oil-based substance, which just basically just stretches out the skin, almost like having implants being placed there, but just an oily thing. It's very dangerous. The risk of infection is high, but there are people that do this. And, he died at 55, and I'm not sure what the cause of death was, but clearly he had a mental illness. And we're seeing this now and more and more with both men and with women, with this sort of weird obsession with weird body shapes. People having these butt implants and all these other things that are sort of a belief. And now we're seeing this as more and more men are being subjected to kind of feminization, and we're seeing that. I think the diet has a role into that. That diet, that estrogenic environment we're in, is causing this sort of men to start to develop this sort of weird body dysmorphia, orthorexia, if you may want to call that, to where they think that they have to be a certain crazy, disproportionate, weird-looking size like this to get any attention. He called himself the Monster, and he was just happy with what he had become. And clearly, just not only the weird disproportion, he had basically no strength to go with his upper body side. He was actually very kind of small in the legs. This is just mental illness, and mental illness is often associated with early death. In fact, it clearly is. And so I think it's important to be strong. I think it's important to be fit. I think there is a sort of a limit to that, and I think the sort of cartoonish level that we see some people, particularly in professional bodybuilding, particularly at the highest levels, when enormous amount of drugs are utilized to obtain that, I think that is also kind of a problem as well. And we see more and more young kids now taking drugs to achieve a certain look, when you can have a good physique, a good level of muscularity, and a lot of strength without that stuff. And I'm not going to put myself as a world leader on that, but I have achieved very strong levels of strength without relying on drugs. Certainly not going to inject Synthol in myself, nor do I think women should starve themselves down to supermodel, 1980s supermodel thin either. But then again, we shouldn't also be promoting and saying anything goes, and we should just get as fat as we want and as fat as we can be and pretend that's beautiful, because it's not. So anyway, let me know what you guys think. Do you think there is an over-obsession with hypermuscularity and an over-obsession with over-thinness, or in this case, obesity being glorified? Anyways, interesting things going on. We'll talk to you guys soon.